check.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. We will begin the Tulare County Board of Supervisors, and we will start today with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Supervisor Townsend, followed by a moment of silence.
Join me in saluting the flag. Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. We'll start today's meeting with the Board of Supervisors matters, and I will start with Supervisor Townsend.
Well, thank you very much. This will be much shorter than last meeting. We had our Board of Supervisors retreat the other day, and that was a really good time. Just a working day, and getting to know everybody a little bit more, and getting to figure out the governance of the county, what that should look like, how it should change, how it should stay the same, and then just a lot of good brainstorming on how to move forward with several ideas. And so I enjoyed that time. And then on the 22nd, had the opportunity to attend and present some certificates to the Wall of Fame inductees at the Porterville Wall of Fame. It's about the highest honor in the city of Porterville to be inducted. And so there was a great group of 5, including Doug Webb and Grace Munoz-Rios, Raymond Camarena, Denise Marchant, and James Cusero, all really titans in the Porterville area, really treasures. So that was a lot of fun. And then tomorrow I'm going to get up to speed a little bit on some of the projects that will be going on in and around the Porterville area through TCAG. I'm going to meet with Ted Smalley for a bit tomorrow and get updated on that. And looking forward to the Farm Bureau Gala this Friday evening. And that's what I have, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Supervisor Vanderpool.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Few items that I wanted to go over this week. Public meeting for everyone to be aware of this Wednesday at 8:30 at the Tessera Board Chambers is the Tulare County Employees Retirement Association board meeting. This Wednesday at noon at the Heritage Complex in Tulare is the Farmer of the Year Luncheon. That's always a great event celebrating farmer from in and around the Tulare area and thanking them for their impact on agriculture and impact on the community. So congratulations to Greg Waddy. He has been chosen, and sure appreciate all of his work in and around the Tulare area. This Friday, I will be having a meeting with Jason Phillips from the Friant Water Authority regarding SGMA and its impacts in and around the Tulare area, and what Tulare can do in collaboration with Friant to help mitigate the impacts of SGMA. I look forward to that meeting. We got some information from Caltrans yesterday, and I was just checking to make sure this wasn't something that our COG director deemed as top secret, but oh well if he did. My email's public anyway, so anybody can get access to it. And he indicated that Caltrans actually approved a design exception for the Commercial Avenue interchange spacing, meaning they can construct the Commercial Avenue interchange in Tulare and keep the Page interchange that currently exists open at the same time. That's a real win for Tulare to not lose an interchange in the process of adding a new one. It will provide a northern access and kind of right into the complex at the International Agri-Center access south of Tulare, and I really do think it'll be a huge win for industrial development and commercial growth in and around the south part of Tulare, and I think the unincorporated area as well. So big win for us there, and I look forward to seeing that project be built. And actually, based on the timing that's suggested in the public-private partnership that exists there with the International Agri-Center and TCAG, we will probably be able to construct 2 interchanges at one time, meaning we can go forward with the Caldwell interchange that this board has been involved with, as well as the Commercial Avenue interchange. And that's very exciting and very rare for any jurisdiction to have 2 major interchanges on a state highway constructed at the same time. So real exciting about that, and that's all I have this morning, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Supervisor Valero.
Supervisor.
Best for last.
Well, that's because he saw you were putting together your board comments while I was talking, so you don't want to catch you off guard.
Good morning. Good morning. So last Wednesday, I attended the United Health Center's groundbreaking in the city of Dinuba. It is the second UHC in Tulare County, the first being in Early Mart. I also attended the Ag Committee, and it is moving along very well. We met last Wednesday to discuss the bylaws as well as to focus on a vision for moving the committee forward. On that same topic, Mike Washam and I attended a meeting just yesterday with the Farm Bureau and the Ag Commission Chair to bridge and build a relationship along with discussion on agriculture in Tulare County. Busy week for our sheriff. I just want to highlight our sheriff. And last week I was able to participate in 2 events with the sheriff. The first one being his branding event at the Bob Wiley Center on Friday. It was a first for me, and I really enjoyed the experience. It served as a recognition for our sheriff team, who provides farm to table for our inmates. I also attended the opening ceremonies for our NFL flag football in Ivanhoe that's sponsored through the Sheriff's Department. And I was able to have a conversation with our sheriff who mentioned that we have about over 200 youth participating in this program. And in addition to that, his greater vision is that we're able to start cohorts in Pixley-Tipton, Ridge Grove, and Cutler-Rossi for future competitions among these various communities. So again, thank you, Sheriff, for that vision and that commitment. For this week, I will be attending the Community Conversations that is hosted by Fresno State, and it will be held in Corcoran. And so this is an opportunity for the president of the university to see what the needs are for the Central Valley, specifically in Tulare County and Kings County, in order to help promote and encourage Fresno State presence in and around the area. And then Dinuba will be holding its annual business expo to showcase all the great businesses and community organizations helping to make Dinuba thrive. So that will be happening tomorrow. And then on Thursday, I will serve as a judge at the regional level Lions Club speech contest in Clovis. And the topic this year is freedom of the press. What does it mean? And then on Friday, I will be speaking at the Rural Policy Summit at UC Merced. So looking forward to engaging with scholars and students and graduate students on topics pertinent to the rural issues that are affecting our Central Valley. And then I was also asked to invite all of the members of this dais to the Vietnam Veterans event this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Dinuba Memorial Hall. This event will recognize veterans across Tulare County. And so again, the event starts at 10 a.m. at the Dinuba Memorial Hall. And then on Monday, I'm looking forward to touring as well as participating in an orientation that our agency director, Tim Lutz, has put together. And so we will be spending a day really knowing the nuts and bolts of HHSA. And so looking forward to that on Monday.
Excellent.
That's all I have.
Supervisor Shecklian.
Okay, I too attended the retreat, and I want to thank my colleagues and council and Jason. I think we had a very good day, open and honest discussions, and going to help us move forward in a good way here on the dais. So thank you. On Friday, I had my San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting, which is affectionately known as the Amtrak Committee. We approved a draft business plan, which is going to change. We're now going to have 7 daily routes from Bakersfield to Sacramento, so if you want to ride the train, be sure to do that. And when you do, please go to the cafe car, because there is a $2 million loss a year on the cafe car. So we're working on trying to change that. So it's nice to go, grab a microwave burger and a beer and enjoy the sights. So I also attended the sheriff's branding on Friday. And unlike what I heard Supervisor Valero did not partake in, I did share a Rocky Mountain oyster with the sheriff. Thank you very much. In Eddie's defense, he is a vegetarian, so I'm sure that was his excuse for not having one. But as I said, it's something I can mark off my bucket list now. Not that it ever was on my bucket list. So thank you very much, Sheriff. On Saturday night, I helped to MC the Tulare County Symphony League's gala event, and it's pretty incredible. We're very lucky in Tulare County to have such an organization that supports the other great organization, which is the Sequoia Symphony. There were some young folks there who sang opera and other things, and it was just a great event. So if you ever have the opportunity to attend any of the Sequoia Symphony events, I encourage you to do so. Thursday, I will be attending a harassment training, so I've got like 2 days left to harass whoever I want to harass, so I'm pretty good at harassing.
You do a good job at that
I do, so I
already.
don't really need any training, but anyway. And then on Saturday at 2 p.m., I will be attending a women's history tea time at the Tulare County Historical Museum at Mooney's Grove. So that's all I have.
Good.
And Monday is April Fool's Day, so watch out.
Oh, boy.
Just a note to Supervisor Valero that that's not meat.
That's true, huh?
Yeah.
And it's probably grass-fed, so it's kind of vegetarian.
Right. Okay. Definitely not meat.
All right, with that,
In case the opportunity ever presents itself again.
I just want to highlight a few things. Last Saturday, Comcast Xfinity opened or had a ribbon cutting. The business has been open for a few months here in Visalia, a new center that I was able to participate and speak. And it's one of 5 locations that they're starting a new customer service center that you can do your normal utility type stuff, but also get other type of services as well. So it's somewhat like a store. So it's I know other utilities and telecom are kind of going to this model where they're having a one-stop shop, and it's less utilitarian and a little more customer friendly. I just want to note as well that we all attended the board retreat, and I appreciate Supervisor Shuckley in bringing up the idea and really being persistent on making sure that we did something over the last couple of years. I think there was a lot of very good dialogue, mainly around governance and how we want to work together and making sure that we're moving forward with the priorities of Tulare County and making sure that this is a better place. And so I think that, there's not everything was resolved. There was no voting that took place or anything like that, but it was a very big picture, kind of, how do we work together? How do we communicate? And how do we get behind the similar visions? And so I think it was a good start to a dialogue that can help us make sure that we help make Tulare County better. This week, I want to highlight Wednesday. There's a few events. One, the Common Threads Lunch is an annual lunch that honors women in agriculture. It's held at Fresno State. I believe it's the Ag One Foundation puts that on, and they normally honor at least one person from Tulare County. It's kind of typical. This year they have 2. The Briano sisters, Kathy Briano from here in Visalia, as well as Giovanna DePauli, is going to be honored for their service to agriculture, being involved with agriculture. They're a couple of, I think, popular gals that have kind of moved on up or moved away, I should say. I don't know about moved on up. Giovanna's in Strathmore, so that's debatable, I guess. And so I'll be attending that and supporting their honoring. And then tomorrow night we also I'm hosting a town hall in Woodville. So I thank all the departments that are going to be participating in that tomorrow night. This is one of a few that I've done, and so it's just an opportunity to get out into a community that normally doesn't interact with the county on a regular basis. So giving general updates as far as what we're doing in Woodville, as well as if they have any feedback or any issues or concerns that they want to address, then we have individuals that can help look into those things and answer those inquiries. Just as note, there have been some improvements. One of the county parks that we own and operate is in Woodville, and there's a large sidewalk project that's going to be built this year in Woodville that'll help with accessibility in the town. And so a couple of good things that are happening in Woodville, in a community that probably doesn't get a whole lot of improvements on a regular basis from the county. So again, thank everyone who's in advance for participating and helping me with that event tomorrow night. I'll also be attending the Farm Bureau Scholarship Dinner. It's on Friday evening. That's a great event, as well as I think I'm going over down the hallway to the Tulare County Office of Education's lip sync competition. Hopefully, for everyone's benefit, I don't think that's the case. For everyone's benefit, they better hope that I'm not going to be singing or doing anything up there. So there'll be two great events on Friday night. And then lastly, I just want to remind everyone that next Tuesday, our next board meeting, will be an evening meeting. It will be the first of 4 evening meetings that we will have, and it will be in Strathmore at the Memorial Building. And so as of right now, the meeting schedule looks like it's going to be fairly light, but I just want to appreciate everyone for going out, or for any of the departments that have items on that agenda next week. It's something that I know Supervisor Vanderpool has taken, and going out and doing the evening meetings. I really like the idea, and so I'd like to continue that, and this is the first start of that. The little twist is going into unincorporated communities. So I think that's the difference that we're doing this year, is making sure we're reaching communities that their only direct service is the county. They don't have a city council that takes care of most of their basic needs. And so when we go to these unincorporated communities, although they may be smaller, we're really their only advocacy point for their basic needs. So I think it's important. And I think that it's important to note, just for staff's sake, that we don't gauge success of these meetings based on how many people attend. We gauge success by whether or not we do it. Are we offering it? And I think that's good enough. As long as we're showing a good faith effort that we're offering it, then that's good enough to determine that it's been successful, not whether or not we have a packed house. So just keep that in mind when, if there's any grumblings or whatever, because, you're going home after 8 p.m. at night or something like that. And there was only 2 people in the audience. So appreciate it. With that, we will move on to item 2. Recognize Robert Newby upon his retirement from the General Services Agency for his many years of county service. And I believe Mr. Townsend has some info.
Yeah.
Nice plaque.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Come on around here, Robert. I need to read this about you beforehand, before we let you talk. How about that?
Oh, very good.
Today we recognize Mr. Robert Newby for his distinguished career with the County of Tulare and wish him well in his retirement. Mr. Newby has dedicated more than 35 years to public service, nearly 28 of which have been spent with the County of Tulare as a right-of-way agent, property specialist, and finally, property manager. This is a role which was established, grown, and made essential within the county by Mr. Newby himself. An expertise in property management, right-of-way, and real estate, coupled with historical knowledge acquired through his tenure in public service, constitute Mr. Newby's greatest contribution to the county. In addition to negotiating and executing hundreds of property agreements, Mr. Newby dedicated a great deal of time toward establishing and updating standardized procedures and policies for the acquisition, disposition, and management of county property. In all of his work, Mr. Newby exemplifies the values of the county, and for this reason, he is held in high esteem with the board, county management, and his colleagues. He has a kind disposition, it says right there, is that true? Easy humor, he just proved he left, and willingness to share and receive wisdom that is appreciated by all. When working with the public, he is friendly, composed, and courteous, and on either side of the negotiating table, his shrewdness is only tempered by his penchant for fairness. Mr. Newby has been an asset to the County of Tulare, and we are proud to have had him on our team, and you will be missed. And now you get a chance to talk.
Thank you.
Come on up.
I would just like to thank all of my workmates and the board for all the time that I've worked here. The treatment that I get from staff is great. All of the information that I given the board in closed session and on property negotiations and received information back has all been very great asset to the county. They've always let us do what we need to do to make a property work for us at negotiations, and I just want to thank everyone that I've participated with in the county for all the friendship and the details that we've all gone through. But thank you.
Robert, you truly will be missed, and we hope that you've trained up your replacement before you, well, I guess you got a couple of days before you leave,
yeah.
right? Okay, make sure and have somebody in place, okay?
We do have a good team in place.
All right, and with that, congratulations, and we'll present you with the seal of the County of Tulare.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations, thank you.
Comments from members of the board?
Real quick, I just want to say thank you to Robert. I've had the chance of working with Robert for over 10 years, and he's been a closed session frequent flyer, as I would like to call him, because he dealt so much with property negotiations. But Robert also was very helpful in assisting various constituent issues and really did put customer service, internal and external, as his number one priority. So, Robert, you will be missed. I didn't know you lived in District 5. I used to hold you in high esteem, but I really do hope all of the best years are ahead of you in your retirement. So thank you, Robert.
I want to echo those comments. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I think you've led us very well in many of our real estate transactions. And if Supervisor Emeritus Mike Ennis was here, I think one of his comments would be something along the lines that everyone wants to know who this Newby character is. He's the largest landowner in the county, because you're always affiliated with county transactions. So appreciate your service to the county. If there's no other comments, we'll move on to item 3 and recognize Kathy Walker upon her retirement from the Public Defender's Office for many years of county service. I believe our public defender has a few comments to make before Supervisor Sheklian gives the plaque.
I don't know.
Your show, Lisa. You feel do as you feel fit.
Supervisors, Mr. Britt, Ms. Peterson, it's my privilege, and I'm very pleased to be here to recognize Kathy Walker in her retirement. The public defender is losing 3 key employees this week to retirement. All told, they represent or have served the Tulare County for 107.5 years. So you can see what a significant loss of history, knowledge, experience we are going to experience this week. That part makes me sad, But I'm, of course, very happy to be able to congratulate my colleague in her retirement. I've worked very closely with Kathy for many years. She retires as an administrative services officer. She began her career with Tulare County over 32 years ago. She started at County Council and was a paralegal there for 8 years when Neil Pereira, one of my predecessors, met and saw how she worked in the courtroom handling conservatorship matters, and he saw talent and skill that he wanted to bring into the public defender fold, which he did. And so for the last 25 years, she's been a key member of our staff. And she came as a paralegal. Neil created a position for her called the Public Defender Services Administrator, I think is what it was called. And then she promoted into the Administrative Services Officer position, has been both 2 and now is a 3, showing you the degree of experience and knowledge that she's gleaned. Reading in her past performance evaluations, over and over you see self-starter, intelligent, motivated, driven. My observation has been she's patient beyond belief when dealing with our staff members as well as members of the public. She never loses her cool, always goes to find the answer, and is just truly a remarkable employee, and I can't tell you how much we are going to miss having her on our staff.
I think the years that she spent with the county council all verify that she has to be patient.
That's true.
On behalf of the county, in appreciation of your years of service and dedication to the community and to Tulare County, from July 27th, 1987 to March 28th, 2019. So you got 2 more days. Yes. Thank you very much for your service, and as Lisa said, for your patience and for putting up with everything. I'm sure you saw a lot go through the county in that time. So congratulations and enjoy your retirement.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll get a step back a little bit here. Can you get that, Carrie?
Okay. Jeez.
All right. Congratulations.
Thank
Enjoy.
you.
And we'll move on to item 4, which is recognition of another individual from the Public Defender's Office, Julian Almanza. So, Julian, if you come up. And Ms. Bertolino has a few nice words to say, I think, first before Supervisor Shucklian presents you with your plaque.
I do. Julian is one of the few people left in my office that was there when I first began. Julian has served the county of Tulare for 38 years and is well deserving of his retirement. He has served the county well. He too has shown an incredible amount of dedication to the office of the public defender. He initially started with the county in 1981 as an eligibility worker for what is now under the HHSA umbrella. He was there for just a few years and then came to our office, first starting as an interviewer, and then after, again, a fairly short period of time, became one of our very few investigators. In fact, I think you were the second investigator. And so it was a staff of 2 investigators at that time. And Julian has, again, shown the kind of dedication, character that I think that the department I work in has been very fortunate to possess in most of the employees that come through our doors. I am very sad to see Julian leave, and very pleased for him. He will have, he and his wife will have plenty to do. They have 2 grandchildren that live with them, and so he remains very busy. I don't think he's going to have a whole lot of downtime in his retirement, but I know that he will find plenty of wonderful adventures and things to enjoy in this new in this new phase of his life. Julian, I wish you all the best. Again, sad to see you go, but extremely happy that you are able to retire at this time and enjoy this new part of your life.
Well, Lisa, thank you for those kind words, and I as well do appreciate the Public Defender's Office for, I guess, for the years of service. I've been with them for 35 years. I recall being with the county when I was 26 years old, almost 40 years later, but ready to collect Medicare. But I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Board of Supervisors for acknowledging us employees for the years of service. And again, you know what, I have no regrets working for this county. If I had to do it over again, by all means, I would do so. And I'm very proud of the fact that I've been a member of the Public Defender's Office for those 35 years. And thank you again.
Thank you, Julio.
I know we've all watched a lot of cop shows, and we all probably can recite the Miranda rights, and it says about if you can't afford an attorney, one will be provided to you free of charge. But with people like Julian and Kathy, it's more than just the attorney. It's the support that they also receive that serves the people who need a public defender. So, Julian, in appreciation of your years of service and dedication to the community in Tulare County, March 30th, 1981 to March 28th, 2019. And you should also be very lucky that Supervisor Vanderpool is not presenting this, because he would say something about he probably wasn't even born in 1981.
More than likely.
But I was.
My parents weren't married either.
So I appreciate you very much. Congratulations and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Hang on.
Come on, man. That's all right.
This is what I'm here for.
It's been a long haul.
Right.
Over there now.
One more. Thank you.
Good luck to you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of comments. The Public Defender's Office isn't one that we get to interact with very often, but I just want to take a quick second to wish both Kathy and Julian well in their retirement. These departments are losing some long-tenured employees, but they're losing pillars in their departments, those that have been mentors for the younger generations that are coming in behind them. And you will be missed. I hope that you've passed on the characteristics and dedication of public service that you have both embodied to the next generation, because we need more people like you in this county and in public service. So like Supervisor Shuckley mentioned, I know, Julian, you've been around here longer than I've even been born, and my parents were married, all those sorts of comments. But, I don't get to say that as often anymore, because now I'm 34, so I'm getting old myself, as I'm reminded by a 5-year-old son who happened to turn 5 today. But, I just really wish you the best in your retirement, and thank you for your public service, and thank you for helping to make the Tulare County Public Defender's Office the strong public advocate that it is. I know that you're not often appreciated publicly, but thank you for the service you provide, and thank you for the years of dedication you've given this county.
Thank you, and we will move on to item 5, and recognize Sylvia Nacianceno upon her retirement from the Health and Human Services Agency for many years of county service. Supervisor Townsend will be presenting you the plaque.
You can come on up, Sylvia. Hi. Congratulations. And I will put on my glasses now to read this one because it's in smaller point because there's a whole lot to say about you. So, Sylvia started her career with Tulare County in May of 1984 as a clerk typist at the Tulare Works District Office in Tulare. Sylvia began to work for Tulare County with a goal to help the less fortunate. She learned to administer the various financial programs available for the low-income population, such as CalWorks, CalFresh, Medi-Cal, and various financial programs available for the low-income population. In 1997, Sylvia promoted to her current position as unit manager. She has encouraged staff over the years to learn the meaning of empathy for the clients, for the community, understanding for their situations, respect for them as individuals, and self-worth and dignity. When asked about a success that has stood out, Sylvia spoke about an encounter that happened just a few months ago. When visiting a restaurant, a woman approached her and said, "Sylvia, I remember you from 26 years ago. You were the one who told me that I could do anything if I tried." This woman had gone back to school to finish her education and owns the restaurant that Sylvia was visiting. Sylvia stated this was one of the most rewarding moments for her. To know that she had such an impact on someone's life was a great milestone accomplished. Sylvia has had many special moments, especially those moments when she has seen someone promote that she has had the privilege to work with. She stated those moments were special for her as their success is her success. Something unusual that everyone may not know about Sylvia is that she collects owl figurines. Look at that. That looks like the one from Clash of the Titans. Is that one? Wow, have you seen that one? You got to see the old Clash of the Titans movie. It has a mechanical owl just like that. I thought that's what it was. Except it was kind of a odd figure. I don't know. It was kind of devious, so I don't know. She has had a hefty collection of these figurines. She collects these as she believes in the owl's wisdom. The more the owl sees, the less he speaks. The less he speaks, the more he hears. The owl has taught her many lessons along the way: to be observant, to speak less, and to listen more. Sylvia loves camping and nature. The serenity of the mountains is truly a gift given to all of us for enjoyment. After retiring, Sylvia plans to enjoy her family and dedicate her time to her family and the man who has supported her and has been with her for the last 39 years of marriage. Is he out there? No.
That's how it's lasted so long.
Oh, he's working. Okay. He's getting ready for that camping trip, right? Get a little bit more gear. She also has plans to give back to the community as a traveling caterer. Sylvia appreciates Tulare County for all the wonderful years of work. She stated, "I am proud to have been an employee of Tulare County and seeing the needs of the community." And Sylvia, I'm going to do something a little different. We're going to have our CEO make a couple of statements. Mr. Jason Britt.
Thank you, Supervisor Townsend. Normally I don't weigh in on these, but Sylvia is special to me today. I want to congratulate her on her retirement. Sylvia Nacianceno is the one responsible for hiring me 25 years ago and bringing me into the county. So it's her fault if you're not happy with the results. Wow. But I just wanted to say, Sylvia, congratulations, and it's well-deserved retirement, and I appreciate all the years that we worked together, and I wish you all the best in your retirement.
I tell everybody I'm not going to cry. So I'm not going to cry. But I do have to say the last 35 years have been pleasant. I hope that I have taught everyone, not only in the second largest office in Tulare County of Tulare Works, but all the district offices as I meet with them and talk to them. But I think it's very important for everyone to understand what Tulare Works is about. It's not an easy job. it's very difficult to know that the people that come in to see you are there for a need. Whether they be homeless, whether they need financial assistance, food assistance, whatever it may be, any kind of service. I'm very thankful to have worked for this agency that provides all of those services. And as I said, it's very difficult, and when you know that more than 50% of Tulare County is on some form of public assistance. And I am glad to have served the county and met the needs of the people who really need it, and I will continue to do that in the next few years of my life. I know I mentioned something about a traveling caterer. Yes, my husband's in the process of putting together a little mobile unit where I will be able to cook, because I used to cater years ago. Well, I will be able to cook and hopefully get out there and serve some of the community members that really need some food, free of charge. So that'll be a great accomplishment for us. But again, I want to thank Tulare County. I want to thank all my past leaders, my current leaders. I've had great mentors, and I think that's probably one of my biggest successes. I want to thank Mr. Britt. Again, I didn't get a chance to congratulate him when he became our CEO, but I will now. Congratulations, Jason. Thank you very much.
So I'll read this, presented to Sylvia Nacianceno, HHS Unit Manager 1, in appreciation of your years of service and dedication to the community and to Tulare County, May 14th, 1984 to March 30th, 2019. Congratulations and thank you for your service.
Thank you so much.
Back here? Okay, either way, go ahead.
No, not yet.
It's irrevocable.
Good morning, Board, Mr. Britt, and Council. Vienna Barnes, Deputy Director for Tulare Works. I just wanted to say thank you, Sylvia, for all of your mentorship, your understanding, your dedication, and your public service over the last 35 years. You've been a positive role model to all of us. She hired me as well 25 years ago, and I appreciate everything that you've done. You've created a real positive work environment in the Porterville office and a real cohesive team. You can really tell that when you walk through the door. You've exemplified our agency's mission, vision, and values, and I appreciate everything that you've done for me, for Tulare Works, for our county, and our agency. And good luck on your next adventure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your service, Sylvia, and you can truly see the heart that you possess with your desire to spend your retirement helping others already being shown, and you're going to be missed. And the 35 years that you put in here in Health and Human Services clearly has had an impact. I can see it all around me, literally. And your mentorship and what you are and what you stand for just meant so much for what Tulare County Health and Human Services, especially Tulare Works, does. You truly embody service before self, and I think that the customers, the people who you have served in this county, are so much better off because of the work that you've done. So thank you, and may the best years of your life be ahead of you as well.
Now we'll move on to item 6, public comments. If there's any member of the public wishing to speak on matters that are within the board's purview but not on today's agenda, please step forward. State your name and address for the record.
And everyone else leave.
Everyone, yeah. I think that's happening. Like everyone's going for the door, so I think we will.
Bye.
Have a nice retirement.
Good luck navigating the health department when you get your trailer going.
We'll go on to our consent calendar. And I believe we will take items 18 and 22 for separate consideration. Are there any other items wishing to be pulled or corrections made?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out on item 30 that the agenda item does not note the deviations from the county's standard contract protocol, specifically the issues of venue, which would be in Fresno County, and the addition of an attorney's fees clause.
Very good. Any other items needing to be pulled or commented for separate consideration?
Mr. Chair, if there's no public comments and nothing to be corrected on the consent calendar, I would move for the approval the balance of consent calendar,
Second.
less items 18 and 22.
Moved by Supervisor Vanderpool, second by Supervisor Shucklin. Any members of the public wishing to comment on any items from the consent calendar? Mr. Smalley, be careful
not a good
when
time
you
to raise your
hand. Exactly. Please vote.
Ted's the kind of guy you want to have at an auction when you're the auctioneer, right?
Eddie? There we go. Now the votes are unanimous.
I know you weren't voting no, Eddie, because the no button, definitely doesn't work over
All
there.
right, we'll
'cause
take
Steve
up
never
item
voted no.
18 first. This is Southern California Edison Interconnection Agreement for the solar project. Mr. Lehman?
Good morning, Board, Chairman, Mr. Britt, and Council. I'm Dennis Lehman. I'm your Capital Projects Manager, and I've been given the task of getting solar installed for you. Currently, we have 7 sites that we are almost finished with. 4 of the sites are campus sites, similar to what you see here, including Acres, Government Plaza, and what have you. 3 of the sites are ground mount trackers out at the detention facilities. There are 4 phases of the solar project. We are in the final of the 3rd phase right now. We are installing the last of the modules right now at South County Detention Facility. Currently, we've installed 23,038 modules have gone on out there. So it's been quite a few panels that have been put on in quite a short period of time, despite all of the weather concerns that we have had as well. I want you to know that each one of those panels takes 4 screws to put them down. So it's almost 100,000 screws that were put in there. And I can tell you my tire found one of them. And so far I know that we've had 2 flat tires, and I had one of them. But other than that, we expected parking Armageddon. We striped the parking lot over here. We spent, got it kind of ready again. I think we pulled it off pretty well. I have not received a real formal complaint. Hey, parking is a little more difficult. Hey, this, say that, but not hey, I couldn't find any parking and I just left. So I didn't hear that at all. I was expecting to hear that primarily from employees, but that didn't come. Most of the sites, we're entering in phase 4 right now, and that's battery installation and the final connect. The issue is that we're having right now is we've got to take down several of our buildings in order to connect the solar to them. We have to take them off grid completely. And we're beginning that process. We're meeting with all of our affected people, including our tenants of our buildings, including sheriffs, including some of our occupants of our hotels that we operate. And so we will be shutting those down. We're making provisions for electrical. We're meeting with all of the department heads and what have you to not end up with catastrophes and outages and what have you. We will be planning these on Saturdays. We've looked around. We tried Friday night, and for our first one that we had to go in and measure, and turned out to be not so smooth. That's the sheriff's department's busiest night. Go figure. So we will be moving to Saturdays in the morning. That does give us a little bit of float space in case something goes wrong. Some of these outages are half hour. Some of them are 6 to 8 hours. We're connecting things that were built South County Detention Facility isn't even final yet. We're connecting it, and we're connecting also the courthouse, which was built in 1950. The equipment is dated 50s vintage. They weren't thinking about solar then, so there's some real heroics that have to go on in the basement of the courthouse building. That will be out for about 6 to 8 hours. The project has one last phase that will go on, and we've been fighting the weather, and that's the repaving and the repair work. We're just having a difficult time. We do have some contingency money, and we will be using it to pave Burrell Avenue from Woodland all the way through both of the parking lots here, Woodland, at the board's parking lot, council's parking lot, and all the way back out to Woodland. The road is in pretty deplorable condition. We just had the testing done, and we're developing the R values and what have you to establish what kind of paving we have there. Any questions?
I like the parking lot condition because it's similar to what some of us have to deal with on a regular basis out in the county. So it's not that bad.
Reminder.
Yeah.
Thanks for the update, Dennis. I think it's great. We approved the project mid last year, and I think it's great to get an update and to see that we are going to be completely finished with this project in June of this year,
June, right.
according to the timelines I've seen. And I wanted this to be a public update, and we are well on our way to saving $1 million a year in electrical costs. And I think that is a great point to be made for members of the public and taxpayers to know that we're trying to use our money wisely. So thank you.
Thank you. One last thing. I'm sure going to miss Mr. Newby. Thanks.
Any other comments? Questions, members of the public? Moved by Supervisor Shucklian.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Townsend. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous. Now we'll take up item 22. Approve an increase in the funding set aside by $900,000, total project cost of $1.2 million in order to complete the necessary improvements for the repurposing of the youth facility as Probation Service Center North and beautification of the surrounding juvenile justice complex grounds. Ms. Bonwell.
Chairman, Board, CAO, and Council. I'm here this morning just to, I think, explain a little more in detail our request for today. I added to your presentation a photograph of this site. The area highlighted in yellow was what we presented in our first proposal in November 6th of 2018 that was already approved. So that was for the initial $300,000. It was only going to take care of the place that will be an extension of the Voc Ed building and an extension of training space. As you can see, the majority of the building has yet, nothing was planned for that. And in speaking with General Services, what was determined was when we go out for bid to have the additional, because they asked what my vision was, and like I spoke at the last meeting, was to eventually kind of repurpose the entire building to expand upon services to youth and families in the community. Again, in conversations with them, it was discussed the ability to do add alt options as part of the bid process. And so that's what this additional request is for, is then to kind of repurpose the entire building with regard to carpet and paint, and then at that add alternative option. So we can then kind of look at all of the estimates, the bids, and then move from there, and this funding should cover that. So it would be to completely carpet and paint the entire structure, and then there's just some minor things that need to be addressed within the building. But like we discussed previously, nothing structural to the building. It's more cosmetic. And the $300,000, if you've been out there anytime in the winter when it's rainy, it's kind of an island. It becomes an island because it floods all around it. So we're hoping that the landscaping project, which was taken out of the original building budget when it was built in the 80s, will also address some of that. And the county's had to put additional money into additional tenants of the courthouse because there's been issues with flooring that has come up and seepage from the ground. So we're hoping that being able to finally address this properly will assist with that.
I think that's a good point that sometimes we miss, is that the landscaping really will help with the flooding concerns. I know that was something that was brought up in the past with keeping water out of the building as well as absorbing and somewhat of a buffer, which is kind of an interesting concept, but I think that's important. It's not just aesthetic, but there's an actual purpose to it as well. comments?
Yeah, and I would just like to say I actually toured the facility about a week ago, and just hearing your vision and what you want for the space is amazing, and I'm looking forward to seeing the CTE area completed so that way we can continue to work on our youth and getting them into employment post custody. So thank you so much for that.
Other comments from the board or members of the public? Entertain a motion.
Thank you, Chief. With that, I would move for approval.
Moved by Supervisor Vanderpool, second by Supervisor Shucklian. Please cast your votes. The motion carries unanimously. Bonwell. Now we will go on to our timed items that were scheduled for 9:30 at 9:55, and we'll start with item 7, public hearing. A request from the Resource Management Agency to review and accept Tulare County's 2018 Annual General Plan and Housing Element Progress Reports. And the public hearing is now open.
Very good. Chairman Crocker, Supervisors, CAO Jason Britt, County Counsel Deanne Peterson, I am Aaron Bach, Assistant RMA Director.
Ooh, no longer interim.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate, and I am humbled by the gesture. Today before you is Tulare County's 2018 Annual General Plan and Housing Element Progress Report. Dave Bryant and myself will be tag teaming this item. I will go through the first few slides and he'll give you more of the nuts and bolts and maybe some of the changes that as the requirements for HCD have changed slightly. Under Government Code Section 65400 requires that counties submit an annual report regarding the status of the general plan and the progress of its implementation to the Governor's Office of Planning and Research and Housing and Community Development on April 1st of each year. As part of the general plan report, an annual housing element is required to be submitted, and it's in your packages before you today. So what does that contain? Well, mostly it contains our accomplishments for the year. It's been a great year for RMA. We've accomplished a Climate Action Plan 2018 CAP update, which was adopted by your board in December. That includes an emissions inventory update, a Climate Action Plan monitoring, tracking, and includes protocols and tools to be used by RMA in the future. And we won't necessarily need to rely on the consultant so much moving forward. It also includes annual progress reports as required by our Climate Action Plan. The county is on track to achieve its 2020 target because growth is lower than projected, resulting in lower emissions. And the 2018 CAP update incorporates new baseline and future year inventories to reflect the latest information and updates the county strategy to address the increased standards under SB 32 with the 2030 target. We also were able to update the health and safety element under GPA 18-004 in December. That included a basis for emergency planning and to obtain federal funding. And what do we mean by that? Under FEMA, it was required that the county's health and safety element be amended to incorporate the 2018 L8 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan to ensure continued eligibility for projects, grants under FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Assistance Programs, including Hazard Mitigation Grant Funds, Pre-Disaster Mitigation, and Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant Program. So we are in place to receive funding, and if there are any any emergencies, we should be, the funding will be available to us. So as far as other general plan accomplishments, we adopted 3 community plans last year, Goshen, Three Rivers, and Poplar Cotton Center. That includes zone changes, mixed-use overlays, and by right zoning were adopted for each one of these plans. Since 2013, under the Complete Streets program, we have completed 16 projects, including 26 roadway designs to 30%. 6 programs were approved through the community plan updating process, 9 were approved independently, and the final one, Three Rivers, was adopted when the community plan was approved in June of 2018. Each one of these complete streets has been the subject of ATP funding, not necessarily successful, but it does help these projects get funding when we go out for grants, especially with TCAG. Corridors plan update, the Sequoia Gateway Business and Commerce Center was approved in December as well. The project consists of a specific plan, a corridor plan for the development of a highway commercial regional commercial center, and that is currently moving forward to get a parcel map. So these projects are all moving forward. Like I said, we did Goshen, Poplar, Three Rivers, Sequoia Gateway, the health and safety element, and the climate action plan within the last year. We've also done the Anderson Village hash project, which was before you today for the extraterritorial service agreements. We have done a surface mining operation for Mitch Brown, a composting facility for Helio Vandervis near Pixley. Sundale Vineyards has expanded its operations and not as much to a greater scale as they have previously, but we did add 100,000 more square feet to their project area. And we have one solar project that had gone to the PRC, but we have other solar projects that we're in discussions about currently. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dave to get a little bit more nuts and bolts about this, what we have to submit to the state, but we are on a little bit of a tight time frame here. So,
good morning, Chairman Crocker, members of the board, Mr. Britt, CAO, Ms. Peterson, County Council, Dave Bryant, Chief Planner, Tulare County RMA. The next portion of our presentation includes some notable public works improvement projects. The bridge replacement over the Traver Canal, Avenue 416 widening, 2 to 4 lane project, essentially west of Dinuba to the county line. East Porterville water well project, a flashing beacon on Road 204 in Tuleville as a safety enhancement. There were several road rehab projects on Avenue 44 near the Tipton area, improvements in Terabella and Rich Grove as well. A couple of rapid response projects benefiting Poplar and Ivanhoe. A total of 14 locations received road rehabilitation, and which included 70 miles of chip seal and improvements at the Ledbetter Park to include ADA enhancements and improvements to the water distribution system there. There were several notable amendments to the ordinance code. The first one involving implementing a local agency management program to provide for and to implement standards for on-site wastewater treatment systems. Those would be for standards for engineered septic systems. And then in addition to that, updates to the ordinance code pertaining to restrictions on cannabis activities to update the ordinance code reflective to that. In regards to housing element accomplishments, the current housing element was adopted by your board in 2015. It has a life of 8 years and will expire and will be need to be updated in 2024. It was certified by the state HCD in 2015 as well. A comprehensive disadvantaged community study was adopted by your board in 2017, which included a major analysis regarding inventory, identifying needs and deficiencies in unincorporated communities regarding various infrastructure. Also included was a comprehensive development priorities matrix as part of the Action Program 9. In the housing element, basically putting the county in a position to be successful in identifying needs and deficiencies to help to promote grant opportunities in the future. Also, in regards to housing element accomplishments, new units, 149 new units were constructed in the county. 90 units were demolished, recognizing a total gain of 59 housing units over the past years. A couple of noteworthy accomplishments in regards to the homelessness program. A homelessness initiative coordinator was appointed and is currently providing for an expansive safety net and homeless serving programs for outreach and housing. Charles Felix provided information, comprehensive information in regards to the programs that are currently being carried out as part of HHSA. In addition to that, HHSA received a No Place Like Home program technical assistance grant, which would provide, would be including but not limited to hiring consultants, hosting stakeholder meetings, and developing a county homelessness plan. The benefit of being in compliance with the state HCD requirements and providing the administering the programs that the county does is that through a certified housing element, we will be eligible to receive funding from state and federal programs and continue with that eligibility. Our request today is to hold a public hearing to review and accept Tulare County's 2018 Annual General Plan and Housing Element Progress Reports, authorize transmittal of these reports to the California Governor's Office of Planning and Research and the California Department of Housing and Community Development. That concludes our presentation, and Aaron and I would be happy to address any questions that you may have.
Any questions, comments from the board?
I have a question.
Sheckling?
I know Governor Newsom has been threatening some cities and counties to withhold gas tax in 2023 because of affordable housing and housing stock. Do we foresee any risk in that if he does go through with that, which is not right, but...
Yes, through the chair, not really. Anything's possible, but it's always been the law that the funding you receive for transportation is in lockstep with the amount of housing you are projected. That's rarely been enforced in the county, any counties or any cities in California. And in my discussions with ACD recently, they've been going after the list that Gavin Newsom has together. So I think there'd need to be some very creative aspects and changes in the legislation to start forcing that aspect of what was previously the law in regards to roadways.
I'd just like to, Mike Washington, I'd just like to clarify on the list that the governor is utilizing. That is a list of counties and cities that are out of compliance with housing element. We are compliant, so we shouldn't be attacked until it expires in 2024. So we should be good on that standing.
Right.
Thank you.
I think just on that point, I think there's, if that were to happen, there would be a legal challenge because SB1 is pretty explicit. There's other transportation dollars that might.
And for the supervisor's benefit, as far as us being in compliance, we are much more compliant than a lot of cities and a lot of counties in the state of California. We've done a great job so far.
Supervisor Townsend?
Yeah, along those lines, on the net 59 units, do we break out whether those are multifamily, low income?
Yes, we do.
Do you know off the top of your head how many of those are and how many are not?
What I presented to you last time regarding that final map in Goshen, it was about a third was moving towards the low income as far as multi-family or single family residential. I thought it was more of a 50-50 split overall. But that's looking when we had the housing element updated to now. So this last year, seemed to be a little bit more single-family residential.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for consideration.
Mr. Chair, after that riveting presentation, I would gladly move for approval. Nice job, Assistant Director Bach. Good work.
I'll second.
Moved by Supervisor Vanderpool, second by Supervisor Townsend. Please cast your votes. And the votes are unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to item 8, a request from the Resource Management Agency to adopt an amendment to ordinance number 352. Mr. Bach.
Yes, Chairman Crocker, Aaron Bach, Assistant RMA Director. And now for another riveting presentation. Before you today is a change of zone for Mr. O'Sullivan from AE20 to Service Commercial C3. See the project.
And just for the record, the public hearing's now open.
And so the project is located at Avenue 152 and Road 208. See the project vicinity in the map. The existing zoning is AE20 and is next to Jones Tract, which includes some C2 and C3 zoning and residential lands. From the aerial photo, you can see exactly the project's location, and it is adjacent to development. This is the official zoning map, changing the land from AE20 to C3. And here's a site plan. The owner wants to change the property from a fruit stand to a mini mart and a gas station. And that concludes staff's report. The agent, Mr. Forrester, is here if you want to ask him any questions about this project as well. Otherwise, I am here. And that's the recommendation for the Board of Supervisors to accept a categorical exemption and approve change of zone number PZC 18-017.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any
Project seems to make sense to me. So adjacent to development and basically converting from a already existing fruit stand to be a service store and our convenience store and gas station seems to fit for me. So,
any members of the public wishing to speak on this matter? And state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Randy Forrester, 1620 West Mineral King, Visalia, the project engineer and representing Mr. O'Sullivan. We've worked closely with the planning department, which we appreciate the work that they did, and we have no questions concerning the conditions of approval and just wish to move ahead at this point. Thank you.
Just a quick question. Any sentiments from neighboring kind of?
Through the chair, no. Not receive any comments.
Okay.
Any other comments or members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring back to the board.
And I will move for approval.
Moved by Supervisor Townsend.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Valero. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to item 9 regarding potential acquisition of property interest through eminent domain by the South Kauai Mutual Water Company. And first, we will ask the Office of County Counsel for a presentation on this matter. After any questions, we will open the public hearing and then allow this, well, actually, we're opening the public hearing now. Then we'll allow the South Kauai Mutual Water Company to speak and present any evidence, after which the water company is finished. The landowners will have an opportunity to speak. At the conclusion of the landowner's opportunity to speak, we will allow the water company to rebut any evidence presented, but will not allow the water company to present any new evidence. Members of the public immediately impacted may then make public comment. Finally, if there are any members of the public who are not immediately impacted by the acquisition of the property that wish to speak to this issue, we will allow you an opportunity to do so. But also, please direct any questions to the board and not to staff. Mr. Wang.
Good morning, Tulare County Board of Supervisors, Chairman Crocker, Mr. Britt, Ms. Peterson, and Ms. Benton. My name is Matt Wang. I'm a Deputy County Counsel with the County Counsel's Office, and in front of you today is the acquisition of property proposed by the South Kauai Mutual Water Company. And this acquisition of property is going to be through eminent domain. We're here today because the Mutual Water Company is a quasi-public entity, and the procedures required for the water company to exercise eminent domain is a little different and requires your board's consent and approval. So the recommended actions today are: 1, to hold a hearing regarding the proposed acquisition of the related land interest, and 2, to close the public hearing and direct staff to return with findings either in support of or in opposition to the acquisition of property. Just for background, the water company services 157 single-family residential lots in the Cherokee Oaks development subdivision in Three Rivers. They are requesting your board approve the acquisition of property through eminent domain. I'd like to get into the subject property owned by the Jordans and then into the eminent domain, the more substantive areas of the law. The subject property is a 3.33 rural home site located at 40707 Terminus Court in south of Ferndale Drive, and the property has been owned by both Fred and Mary Jo Jordan since 1995. The two live on the site. They have a single-family residence constructed in 1989, and you can see a map attached as Attachment A, and that shows their house and general plot. The property is burdened by an easement held by the South Kauai Mutual Water Company, and the company uses that easement to house a 150,000-gallon water tank. The tank minimizes well pump time, provides water supply in the event of a fire, and also supplies users in the upper portion of the community water system. The tank was built in 1997 and is nearing the end of its 25-year lifespan. It's important to note at this point the easement, when the owners purchased the property, was in existence. The tank was not. In 2015, staff for the water company noticed leakage, and the water company hired LiquiVision Technologies to go underwater and inspect and make any repairs if necessary. Those repairs were made, but the water company believes it is a short-term solution. As a result, the South Dakota Mutual Water Company then hired a consultant to create and evaluate different alternatives to replacing the water tank. Eventually, the board decided to replace the aging tank with one new 100,000-gallon tank, and this would involve acquiring and grading 0.02 acres of the Jordan parcel. In addition, the water company would have to rent temporary storage or pillow water tanks. Plans and the maps for the temporary construction easement as attachments B and C. Now, under federal and state law, the water company is required to pay to the Jordans just compensation for any property acquired through eminent domain. In accordance with state law, the water company hired an appraiser, and you can find the appraisal report as attachment D. Eventually, the appraiser concluded that the overall fair market value for the land interest at stake was $3,837, which it rounded to $3,900. The water company initiated eminent domain proceedings in late 2018, but it had not yet received your board's approval to exercise that power of eminent domain. The water company is represented by J. Patrick Sullivan, and they have extended several offers to the Jordans. The Jordans are represented by Mr. Glenn Stanton of Rudell, Stanton, Bixler, Morrison, and Evans, and we're here today because the parties have not come up to some agreement. Under state law, a mutual water company, despite being a quasi-public entity, can still actually exercise eminent domain, but it first must receive your board's approval as a local legislative body in which the water company sits. We have also procedures listed in the Code of Civil Procedure, and under Code of Civil Procedure section 1245.350, your board may refuse to consent to acquisition of such property with or without a hearing. But if your board decides to consent and allow the water company to exercise the eminent domain powers, it must do so in a resolution which contains three things.
Matt, could you repeat the code section just again for the record?
We're looking at code section 1245.330 for the resolution and the general requirements for the board's authority to consent or reject consent, rather. You're looking at section 1245.350. Sorry. My apologies. That was a typo. It is section 1245.340.
Thank you.
If your board does decide to approve and consent, it must do so with a resolution that contains three basic elements. The first is a general statement of the public use for which the property is to be taken. The second is a general description of the property and the related property interests to be taken. And the third is the most important. It is a declaration that your board has found that the public interest and necessity require the project, and the proposed project is planned or located in the manner that will be the most compatible with the greatest good and least private injury, and the property described in the resolution is necessary for the proposed project, and the hardship to the quasi-public entity, if there is no acquisition of property, outweighs any hardship to the owners of such property. In addition, this resolution must be approved by at least a 2/3 vote of the entire Board of Supervisors. So that means at least 4 supervisors, 4 members of your board must consent before the water company can exercise that power of eminent domain. I want to say 2 more things before I open it up for questions. Under state law, the county will not be liable for any damages caused by the acquisition of property. And second, if your board does consent and authorizes an eminent domain action, and the case between the Jordans and the water company does not ultimately settle, a local judge or jury will determine the amount of compensation that is reasonable and to which the Jordans are entitled. That ends my presentation. Do you have any questions for me? We have both attorneys for the water company and the landowners in the audience as well.
Questions from the board? Well, you can do it now, or you can wait to hear testimony.
I guess one specific one. You mentioned in your testimony they were looking at a repair of the tank. This looks like an additional tank. So there's, just to clarify, there's going to be 2 tanks is what they're proposing, the water company? Yes. Okay.
I had a similar question. So the old tank is no longer usable? Is that correct?
I'm not.
Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not clear about the status of what they are currently using the tank for. I have, from the facts presented by the water company, it is not part of their long-term strategy. I don't know what the day-to-day operations are.
So they're not, it's not even an option to put a new tank where the old tank was?
That was my, yeah.
That's, I guess, the other
Remove the old
crux of the
tank
question.
and-
Since it's already in a place, it's already screened.
Ask the South Kauai Mutual Water Company to come up, and they can answer specifics regarding the project and why they need it. I think that's.
Yeah.
I think that might be beyond Matt's purview, the engineering side. Very good. Any other questions for Matt specifically? If not, I'd like to ask up the South Kauai Mutual Water Company and/or their representative to speak and present any evidence.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Pat Sullivan. I'm the attorney for the South Kauai Mutual Water Company. I have with me today Lou Nelson, who is has worked with Public Works in both the city of Visalia and the county of and the city of Tulare for years. I think many of you know him. He will be answering most of your questions that you may have. Also present is the president and the secretary of the board, which is Mr. and Mrs. Elkington, if you have any questions of the board members. Well, if I may, I'd just like to introduce Lou Nelson and ask him to go ahead and he can start his presentation for you. Thank you.
I'm Lou Nelson. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Supervisors. My name is spelled Lewnelson. I have served as the president and the vice president of South Kauai Mutual Water Company in the past, and I currently advise them on this project. I live in Camarillo, near my daughter and granddaughter at the time. We went there as my wife ended her battle with cancer. And we have tried to negotiate with the property owners for quite some time. I passed out a time schedule. The answer to the question about the use of the tank, yes, it is in use. It has been patched with aluminum and plastic plates and underwater epoxy. Whatever corrosion caused the holes in the leak in the bottom has not been addressed. It could fail at any time. The underwater divers were concerned about being in the tank at the time because they felt like it could fail suddenly and they would be trapped. We got our consultants, Quadnoff, now QK Inc., who touched this project about 18 or 20 years ago when 2 water companies in Cherokee Oaks merged, and they designed and replaced the smaller tank with the current tank, 150,000 gallon. It's about 18 years old since it was installed. They did not spend a lot of time evaluating alternative locations. Water seeks its own level when you connect to reservoirs with a pipe. There are a lot of hills all the way around Cherokee Oaks. You could put a tank somewhere on a hillside and build miles of pipeline to connect it to the existing system, and it would function. However, the logical and common sense solution was to place a second tank next to the existing tank on the Jordan's property. When it was in service, the existing tank could be taken out of service for either repair, it hasn't even been examined as to whether it can be repaired, or replaced, so there will always be 2 tanks up there at the end of the project. We have, since filing prematurely our eminent domain action, started negotiations with the property owner. They responded to the lawsuit with their demands. The board of the water company evaluated an offer, a counteroffer that could be justified to our shareholders. The initial demand was 14 times the appraised value. We were able to justify a 5 times appraisal counteroffer. There's been another counteroffer of 10 times the appraisal. So negotiations are underway, and it is our hope that we will solve this. But the financing for this project has been approved by the Rural Communities Assistance Corporation, a 501c, kind of like self-help. And that approval is subject to controlling the site of the construction by July 1st. And so we need to move forward with the condemnation action, which requires your resolution of approval, and we will continue to negotiate a settlement. Do you have any questions?
You mentioned that there was not another alternative location sought for the new tank?
That's correct. This is a ridge-top tank. Water goes up from the wells to the tank and comes down the other side to serve part of the service area. So any other location would require a seismically designed and constructed pad on the side of a hill, and then it'd have to be interconnected with new pipelines. Much more expensive project.
I'm sorry, thank you.
That's okay. Yeah, Lou, so you said this other one needs a lot of patching and stuff. Should it be repairable, are you then looking to have 2 water tanks there? And what I'm getting at here is, since one is maybe non-repairable or you're not going to use it again, can that just be dismantled and surplused and replaced with a new one?
The existing tank cannot be permanently repaired while it's in service, nor can it be replaced while it's in service. So the alternative presented by Quadnoff required temporary water storage on that ridge. Pillow tanks, you know, these truck-in tanks from Rain for Rent, you've seen them around, all of which would have to go on the same site that we are trying to acquire from the Jordans.
But those would not be permanent.
They would not be
Until
permanent.
you build a new tank, then all of that would be connected to the new tank, correct? And what becomes of the old tank?
And the old tank will hopefully be repaired. When the new tank is in service, the old tank can be drained, and then we can either work on it, depending on how badly the bottom is corroded, and repair it with heavy plastic lining or concrete, something, in which case the old tank would stay there, now repaired and in service. Failing that option, the old tank would be dismantled and removed, and a second, smaller, new tank would be built in its place. So that ultimately there will be 2 tanks where there is now 1.
No matter what, there will be 2 tanks, possibility of one smaller tank where the original tank was, and the reason for that is just capacity, the increased capacity?
Yes, the existing tank has 150,000 gallons of capacity. It met code requirements for fire flow when it was designed and built many, many years ago. However, 2 smaller tanks of 200,000 gallons of capacity would meet current fire flow requirements. So we'd have 2 smaller tanks or a small tank and continued use of the large tank.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Just a follow-up to that, you need 400,000 gallons total? Or you need 200,000 gallons?
We need 200,000 gallons total.
Okay. So a similar sized tank could replace the existing 150. It would have to be a little bit bigger, but it could go on the same site. If you used a temporary solution, temporarily provided water, while you put a new 200,000 gallon tank in, that would be a possible option that hasn't been, I guess, considered?
It was considered and priced and much more expensive. And for instance, the pillow tanks which would be very large in area because they're not very tall, are not reusable. So you essentially have to buy it, and they're very expensive. So the least cost alternative was a blend of temporary storage while replacing the existing tank on the same site, or build a new smaller tank where the temporary tank would go, and then use that for storage while repairing the existing tank or replacing it.
Have you provided any sort of an order of magnitude of costs of these alternatives?
Yes.
That we could
I have not provided it to the county, no, but we can.
I'm just wondering, is it twice as much, 3 times as much, 10% more?
It's at least 50% more than the project that we're anticipating.
Including the purchase of the property that
Including the purchase of the property.
Thank you.
So real quick, just to clarify, the initial appraised value of the lot, or the portion of the lot to be acquired, the 0.08 acres, was $3,900, correct?
That is correct.
And you are in negotiations now. You've gone from an appraisal, and your most recent offer, according to what you've said, Lou, is $39,000 at least.
20.
What's that?
20,000.
Okay, so
5
you
times,
said
yep.
10, I thought you said 10 times.
Well, he said 5 and then.
We've counted 5.
Oh, asking for 10.
They've
They've come down. Okay.
10, yes.
All right. Just want to clarify. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions, comments from the board?
Not at this time.
You?
Thank you.
We'll now go to any landowners that would like to speak on behalf of the representative of the landowners.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Supervisors. My name is Glenn Stanton. I'm an attorney in Visalia. I represent Mary Jo and Fred Jordan, whose property the Mutual Water Company wishes to take involuntarily. As you can imagine, they don't really like having a 155,000-gallon tank in their backyard. Their house is situated such that the tank is at the back of their property at an elevated location. And it's taken decades for them to grow trees and things that would screen the view of that tank. This proposed project seeks to place another tank closer to their home and would require removal of numerous trees that now screen the existing tank, therefore leaving their property in a situation where from most of the vantage points of their house, including their pool area and decks and that kind of thing, would be up the hill at these gleaming steel tanks that the water district wishes to put in. It's a big deal, and the appraisal you saw is a $3,900 appraisal. From our perspective, it's a joke. It has $0 for severance damages. So even if you could construe the appraisal to be valid as to the cost per square foot of dirt, the actual reduction in value to their property is immense and far in excess of the pitiful amount that they talked about. So when the water company talks about 5 times, 10 times, 100 times, it's a meaningless number. We have not had the property appraised yet for technical reasons. It would require 2 appraisals. The appraisal for a condemnation action has to be as of the date of the filing of the condemnation proceeding. We don't have that date yet. So to get an appraisal at this point would necessitate getting 2 appraisals. It's apparent from Mr. Nelson's statements that the board really just decided it was a dollars and cents deal. It's cheaper and easier to just put another tank right there on the Jordan's property. They ignore the fact that there's 2 other properties adjacent to the Jordan's property, the same elevation. They could have easily put the tank on either of those 2 properties adjacent to the existing tank. Instead, they chose to burden the Jordans with that. I think that the discussion about settlement is inappropriate in this venue, other than to say that there have been settlement discussions conducted, and there's an equal number of offers from the Jordans to the water district as there have been from the water district to the Jordans. I think the real issue here is within the scope of the code, whether this is really a necessary thing. And I think the board adopted a resolution, their resolution number 2018-03 back in October, where they said, oh yeah, this is necessary for this project, but they didn't do anything to actually make a determination, a factual determination of necessity. You made the observation that how about a bigger tank in the same location? Maybe it could be a little bit fatter, maybe it could be shaped a little bit differently. How about a different location on adjacent properties that would be less of an eyesore, less of a burden visually on on the Jordan's property and perhaps even the other properties? We requested from the water district or the water company a map of their 2.5 miles of water mains so that we could independently evaluate whether or not there was another suitable location. They elected not to give that to us, so I can't provide you with other alternative locations. I think it's significant, though, that it might be hiding the ball. It might just be that they don't care. Sorry, I've got too many things here in front of me. The resolution that you need to make today, if you're going to do so, and that the water district or water company already did, found necessity. Now, they found necessity, but they didn't do so after making any reasonable effort to determine whether the Jordan's property was in fact necessary. They didn't explore a larger tank. They didn't explore additional sites. They just simply said, well, it's there next to, we'll just put it next to the old one. That does not mean that it's actually required for this project. There may be several other places where this tank could be located or done in a different manner. The code provides that they must find that the proposed project is planned or located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest good and the least private injury. As you can tell from Mr. Sullivan's comments, those of Mr. Nelson, they made no effort whatsoever to try and do that. They just simply picked a spot. They did hire Quad Knopf to do an analysis of tank alternatives, not an analysis of tank locations or different types of tanks at that, well, I should say, I guess different types at that location, but primarily as temporary, not as permanent types of tanks. I think that these same comments can be made for that element, although they made a finding to that effect. It was not supported by any fact, not supported by any investigation. The resolution by the water company failed to include an item that is required under Code of Civil Procedure section 1245.340, specifically subsection C4, which requires that they find the hardship to the quasi-public entity if the acquisition of the property by eminent domain is not permitted outweighs any hardship to the owners of such property. They didn't make that finding, and that is, I believe, fatally defective both to the process today and to their resolution. I think as a result of their failure to make that finding, it would be inappropriate for this board to make it, and it should therefore, in and of itself, fail. The Jordan's objections are based on lack of necessity, as required in subsection C3, the lack of there being any compatible use as provided in subsection C2 and the last section I just quoted in section 4. We think that it's appropriate for the Board of Directors to send the Water District back and deny this application. You have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Stanton? Yes.
One question I have, Mr. Stanton, is I appreciate your commentary and clarifying of the appraisal at the beginning of the comments you made. Are the Jordans customers of this water company? Do they?
Yes, they are.
They depend upon their water from this company as well. Okay.
All the neighbors are all supplied by this company.
Questions, comments from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now have the Mutual Water Company, if they'd like to rebut any of the comments that were made. Is your opportunity.
I'd just like to speak for a second on the negotiations, because I don't want anyone to think that the public company is giving away money. The $3,900 that was appraised by Hopper and Company is for the small area that we're talking about. We had offered in our negotiations to purchase, instead of using the easement process for the second, where the tank is right now, we would go ahead and purchase that property also, and that's the reason we were able to increase our offer. We also are going to pay for $15,000 to $20,000 in repairs to the easement going up to Mr. and Mrs. Jordan's property, as well as another person's property above that, and to the water tank. That's the repairs that have to be made on the easement itself so that the equipment can get in. That's another $15,000 to $20,000 in repairs. The offer also includes that the district or the company will pay for all costs of separating the property off if that's necessary through the planning department. Also will pay for all fees and cost of escrow, et cetera. So it's the negotiation number includes two parcels. The parcel that we're only asking you to allow us to do eminent domain is on one. If we do that, we'll only be going after the one parcel and the other one will remain as an easement. Why would a party want to sell versus go on an easement? Because they still have to pay real property taxes under the easement part. So we'd be doing them a large favor on the, not large, but a substantial amount of money that they're paying for property that the district or the company is controlling under the easement side. So it would be a benefit to them to go ahead and use the whole property, because the whole parcel is going to be used for these tanks. Okay. Have any other questions?
I have another question either for you or Lou. Have you had complaints from any of the neighbors around there as far as the view, the aesthetics, or anything of the new tank?
To the best of my knowledge, the tank is hard to see from any of the neighbors except the Jordans and the home above them. Going back to the alternative site analysis issue, were a workable, it wouldn't be affordable, I'm an engineer, but were an alternative site to be found, we would still be going through the property acquisition process, starting all over again. The budget, which has been funded for the project with a letter of commitment, would no longer be the budget, of course. And we'd be essentially starting all over again on another piece of property that we could be back before you again for a resolution to start condemnation action somewhere else. The Jordans have suggested that we put the tank on their neighbor's property. I know that the neighbor would find that to be unacceptable when it could go next to the existing tank on the Jordans' property. So right there, we got a well-defined fight. And in the meantime, I will point out again, the bottom of the existing tank leaked, was temporarily repaired. Nothing was done about addressing the corrosion that caused the leak. and failure is imminent. It has been imminent since the problem was identified and temporarily patched. And we're talking catastrophic failure when 150,000 gallons run down the top of a ridge in all directions, including, I might add, into the Jordan's home and swimming pool. Any other questions? Thank you.
Stanton, if you'd like to speak, just to clarify any comments, but no new evidence.
If that's acceptable protocol, I do have a couple of comments I wish to make. Thank you. Basically, not anything new, just simply going back to what was said. I respectfully request that the supervisors ignore Mr. Sullivan's comments about settlement discussions. That's really not an issue before the board here today. The question is whether or not they have a right to take my client's property by eminent domain. And as you can I'm certainly appreciate, there's going to be a lot of settlement discussion, but whether that ever comes to fruition or not depends on the parties. That, I believe, is unacceptable for our purposes here today. Mr. Nelson says that it would be more expensive. He made a lot of comments about things that are conclusions. There's no facts, there's no documents in support of the comments that he made about other locations, the lack of other locations, or expenses for any other alternate locations. There just isn't any. And as far as any emergency goes, that's pretty much the problem of the water company. They've been looking at this apparently since 2015 and haven't done anything about it. And certainly the Jordans shouldn't have to take the burden of their slothfulness in dealing with their leaky tank. It is a consideration, but it is not the consideration that is before the board today under the terms of the code. So, just to renew the Jordan's objections both to the taking on the basis that we stated as well as the supervisors approving that taking. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll now go to any members of the public that are immediately impacted. May now make any public comments. Seeing none, are there any public members who are not immediately impacted but still wishing to speak regarding this matter? Seeing none, we do have this on calendar for closed session.
We do, Mr. Chairman. As a point of clarification, did we mention that Attorney Glenn Stanton submitted a letter to the board yesterday, and that will be made a part of a record, and Mr. Wang was to transmit that letter to Mr. Sullivan? Okay.
We did not, but now that has been stated. Thank you.
Okay, we may adjourn into closed session on item C.
Very good. We will adjourn into closed session, and we will be back shortly. Yes, right, refill. Thank you. We're now back in session. Council, was there anything to report out? Or?
No report out on item C.
Members of the board, what's the pleasure of the board? I know I'll just state before we get into it. I think for me personally, I don't take any eminent domain related matters lightly. I think it's something that's very serious, something that that we want to use in only extreme circumstances, and cases that are clearly outlined by the statute. And so I appreciate everyone's testimony today, but it's not, this matter isn't something that I personally take lightly. Yep, Supervisor Vanderpool.
Mr. Chair, our council did a good job. This was actually here for us this morning. We don't entertain eminent domain actions very often at all. But according to Part 3, Title 7, Chapter 4, Article 3, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how to do this stuff. The findings that must be made in order to consent to eminent domain proceedings by a quasi-public entity. There are four charges that must be determined, or four points that must be met. One is that the public interest and necessity require the proposed project. I would agree with that finding. The second finding is that the proposed project is planned or located in the manner that would be most compatible with the greatest good and least private injury. I don't believe that enough of the alternative sites were presented to us that analysis occurred. So I don't know that I can agree with that charge simply because we don't have that information or data in front of us. Charge 3 is that the property described in the resolution is necessary for the proposed project. Again, it could work on the neighboring property, may work on the other property. We don't know. That analysis was not provided to us, so I don't think we can agree with that one. And then item 4 is that the hardship to the quasi-public entity of the acquisition of the property by eminent domain is not permitted, outweighs any hardship to the owners of such property. Again, it sounds like they're in negotiations, and those negotiations aren't really a part of the forum here today. So we can't really evaluate that hardship if that negotiation is continually occurring. So I just don't see that we can actually have all four of these bases be covered with this, and based on that, looking at that, I would make a motion that we deny the request.
Just for the record, I want to close the public hearing. So.
Okay. All right, so I would make a motion that we deny the request by the water district to
I would concur with
property.
Supervisor Vanderpool, and in hopes it sounds like there's still potential for negotiations between the two parties without possibly the use of eminent domain. So I would second that motion.
And you know, just a general comment, I think eminent domain is the absolute final resort. There's a significant time crunch here, but there is some time for a negotiation to happen, and you know, I did appreciate the comment that this is an imminent threat since 2015. The definition of imminency is always interesting in the world of government, but hopefully that there's a resolution that comes real soon, because including the Jordans, there are 157 residential lots that are dependent upon this water and the stability of this supply. So I encourage everyone to get back to the negotiation table and get this resolved so that we don't ultimately get to an eminent domain action.
We have a motion by Supervisor Vanderpool and a second by Supervisor Sheklian. Other comments?
I'd just like to say echo the comments by both Supervisor Vanderpool and Sheklian. And I do also concur that eminent domain should be the very, 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 very last thing that we look into.
And let's just try to find a win-win solution before going to eminent domain.
Right. All right. Please cast your votes. Votes are unanimous. The motion to proceed was denied. We denied the applicant. Now we will move on to item 10, which is a request from the Agricultural Commissioner to adopt an uncodified urgency interim ordinance declaring a temporary moratorium on the cultivation of industrial hemp in the unincorporated areas of the county of Tulare. The swan song.
It is my last meeting.
How many retirement events have you had prior to this? I just want to. Okay.
She's been on
Counting the one on
show.
Friday? Actually, I have two on Friday.
Okay.
In preparation for this board meeting, we contacted our 2,803 separate growers or farm managers of ag property in Tulare County. We got 53 responses.
Public hearing's now open. I'm bad at this. I'm sorry.
I need a sign.
37 of those were interested in hearing more about the production of industrial hemp. 14 said, no, we're not interested. We don't want it growing next door to us. And asked many questions about SGMA and nutrient management plans and, whether that applies to those industrial hemp growers. We had 2 people who were indifferent. And then on the more industry side, we had about 8 to 9 calls from an attorney, an accountant, and investors and folks from outside the county interested in growing land for commercial production. So we're requesting the adoption of the urgency interim ordinance declaring a temporary moratorium on the cultivation of industrial hemp in the unincorporated areas because the United States Department of Agriculture, Ag Marketing Service will not, they don't have regulations in place, but they think they might have a regulation package by September of 2019, this year. And with that comes discussion and public comments. The California Department of Food and Agriculture is still working on a draft memorandum of understanding with the ag commissioners on our role in each county on how we would regulate the commodity, but they're still working on with the Office of Administrative Law on a registration process. The Ag Policy Advisory Committee, as Chairman Valero mentioned, met and discussed industrial hemp, and they really don't have any basis when you don't have federal or state regulations in place to even have a good discussion on what they'd like to see. I did mention the fact that we're going to have pesticide residue issues on this product because of the lack of chemical registrations, insecticides, miticides especially. So what did come out of the APAC committee is the no comfort in discussing it until we see a regulation package and then a recommendation instead of the 10-month and 2-week. They'd like to see a 22-month extension of the 45-day initial moratorium because, their comfort level in finding out whether the federal and state regulations would be accepted by the federal government. And at any time, if 10 months from now we had regulations at both levels and we were comfortable with them, we could always cut that off early. So I was requested to go through the 7 of our requests today, and that would be to hold the public hearing regarding the adoption of the uncodified urgency interim ordinance declaring a temporary moratorium on the cultivation of industrial hemp in the unincorporated areas of Tulare County, to introduce and waive the reading of the urgency interim ordinance, to approve non-project exemptions, general rule exemption, Title 14, California Code of Regulations 15061B3, and a Class 8 category exemption, Title 14, California Code of Regulations 15308, pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act and the state CEQA guidelines, to adopt the urgency interim ordinance prohibiting the cultivation of industrial hemp in the unincorporated areas of the county as an urgency measure pursuant to Government Code Section 65858 with the 4/5 vote required, and to approve a summary of the urgency interim ordinance and direct the clerk of the board to publish and post the summary within 15 days after passage in accordance with Government Code Section 25124B1 Also to direct the Environmental Assessment Officer of Tulare County Resource Management Agency to file the notice of exemption with the Tulare County Clerk. And finally, to direct applicable county departments and advisory boards to begin researching potential impacts of industrial hemp cultivation and related activities to develop recommendations regarding potential local regulation of industrial hemp, and through the Agricultural Commissioner's Department to deliver a preliminary report on such activities to the Board of Supervisors at least 10 days before the expiration of this urgency interim ordinance, at least 10 days before the expiration of any extension of this urgency interim ordinance, and finally, upon final completion of such research. With that, I'll take any questions you have.
Good. Supervisor Valera, did you want to add anything from APAC as far as the discussion that Marilyn didn't cover?
Yeah, well, I just, again, want to thank Marilyn Wright for bringing this to the attention of the Ag Policy Committee and for keeping us current. And just being there in the room, there was an overwhelming support from everyone there. And again, just thank you for moving this forward and your passion on this subject.
Supervisor Vanderpool?
Just a quick question for you, Marilyn. You talk about the lack of federal and state regulation and guidelines, and especially from the agricultural sectors, USDA and State Department of Food and Ag. What are other counties using as justification to move forward allowing industrial hemp to be cultivated?
As far as I know, there's only a couple that have decided to move forward without any regulations. Imperial, and I believe San Luis Obispo County, but I can't be certain on that one. There are moratoriums existing in at least 15 counties. Sometimes ag commissioners don't respond to their emails very quickly, so we're lucky sometimes if we get 30% response. But there are many counties are currently in the process of putting in moratoriums. So I can't really answer that question. I guess they'll...
That's helpful. That's helpful guidance as to what other counties are doing. I mean, to call an urgency interim ordinance of 22 months in length necessary, and that being the ultimate date, it's like saying, Aaron Bach's going to be the interim assistant director of the Resource Management Agency for 22 months, right? I mean, that's just a long time. What if he does better sooner? But I'm glad that you made in your request, you made it clear that should the guidelines come out from the USDA or the state of California, it could be revisited prior to that. So I would definitely support that on that basis for sure.
And that would be up to the board to decide on a 10-month and 2-week or a 22-month and 2-week extension of this 45-day.
Yeah, and it's not just concern about this specific crop being grown in this county. It's about the concern for what about all of the other billions of dollars of crops that are grown in this county and what the potential impacts could be. So I think that has to be definitely considered by this board as well.
Well, and so just for clarification, the item before us today is to pass an interim ordinance, an urgency interim ordinance that would take effect immediately for the next 45 days, and then we would have to hold another public hearing to see what the extended length is in between now. So that doesn't necessarily have to be decided today as far as whether it's 10 months or 22 months or somewhere in between. That'll come at the next public hearing if the board wishes to move forward with the initial 45-day immediate moratorium.
And this is considered a crop by the federal farm bill. So it will eventually, if we move forward and allow industrial hemp production, it will show up in our annual crop statistics.
Is there any other questions, comments from the board or members of the public?
One final question for Marilyn. Just in your crystal ball, since you're going to be retiring in Nebraska and we're not going to hear from you, how soon before industrial hemp overtakes manure on the $1 million crop report list?
I think that would be very quickly if there's an avenue, because if you get all this production going, you better have a home for it, like we find out with juice grapes or raisins or olives. That is a consideration statewide. It's being discussed.
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate the study session. We already have been somewhat apprised about what some of the issues are, and you came before us and kind of already teed up the discussion before we got to today's moment. I think that at that point in time we gave direction for APAC to do a deeper study once guidelines come back, and that will help us make a determination for long-term where the county stands as far as from a policy standpoint. With that, I'll close the public hearing, seeing that there's no one from the public wishing to speak, and look for direction from the board.
I would move approval.
I will second.
Moved by Supervisor Sheckland, second by Supervisor Valero. Please cast your votes. And carries unanimously.
Appreciate it. Thank you,
Marilyn. All right, now we will go to our we'll move on to our untimed portion, or items not timed portion of our agenda, and we'll take up item 32, a request from Tessera on a few different options. And here's another short timer. Boy, we got all the short timers today. How are you doing, Mr.
Yes, I'm
Keeler?
afraid so. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow supervisors, Mr. Britt, Peterson. Very nice to see you all here again today. My name is Dave Keeler. I'm the Retirement Plan Administrator for Tulare County, and I do have a couple of items on your agenda today to address for you. One of which, the first of which, is the results of the June 30, 2018 actuarial valuation that is resulting in a recommendation from the actuary for contribution rate changes for both employers and employees that participate in the plan to take effect with the fiscal year of 2019-20. The Board of Retirement is granted the authority to adopt the contribution rate changes by the California law governing our plan, and did so in November. But the Board of Supervisors has the authority to determine when the rates would be implemented. You have a fairly narrow window period of 90 days from the beginning of the fiscal year to determine when the contribution rates would go into effect. So those are the options that we're bringing forward to you today. The recommendation from the Retirement Board is to implement the new rates beginning with July 1st, or the pay period that includes July 1st, but you have the option to delay them all the way up until toward the end of September. So that is the item before you, and I'd be more than happy to respond to any questions that you might have concerning this request.
Questions, comments from the board?
At the Retirement Board meeting, we reviewed these rates and made the recommendation to move forward with them and to move them on to the Board of Supervisors for adoption. So I would make that same motion here.
By Supervisor Vanderpool.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Sheckland. Any members of the public wishing to comment?
Adopt. No. Option one to adopt.
The motion was to adopt option one. Second concurs with that. Yes.
Supervisor Vanderpool, the difference between the two options, can somebody comment on that?
Dave's more able to comment on that than I am. I don't really remember from the conversation, but it's delaying the adoption of the actual changes. But it's, I think that the rates definitely aren't going down. The rates have gone up slightly, but having those adopted sooner rather than later is meaning more people paying into the system sooner rather than later also.
Actually, that is largely correct. The contribution rates for the plan sponsors, that's county and Tulare County Superior Courts and Strathmore Public Utility District, would increase by a slight amount from currently 12.96% to 13.51%, so about a half a percentage point increase. The employee rates, however, on the average basis are actually going to decline by a small amount. So employee contribution rates would be lower, employer contribution rates slightly higher. The reason that you might want to consider a delay is that obviously it means that you'd be paying a lower rate for another 90-day period, but that does then cause additional unfunded liabilities that have to be made up at some future date by a future group of taxpayers or plan sponsors.
Does this also have to do with, because our approved budget doesn't happen until September, and so that's why this option is being given, even though our fiscal year starts July 1st?
No, sir, it's strictly California law that says that the rates are to begin with the beginning of the fiscal year, but could be delayed up to a 90-day period, and that takes us to the end of September.
And if I could just talk about past practice, beginning at least in fiscal year 15-16, the board has always opted to pay earlier for the reasons stated by Mr. Keeler.
Other comments, members of the public?
I would just like to say, based on the recommendation from our colleague who sits on that board, we should move to approve.
We have a motion and a second already.
Oh, yeah,
by
sorry.
Supervisor Van.
You agree with it?
Yes, I agree.
But
yes.
now we know where you stand. All right. Please vote. And the votes are unanimous. Mr. Keeler, you have item 33 as well.
Linda.
Yes, sir, thank you. And that is a request by the Board of Retirement for the Board of Supervisors to adopt Government Code Section 31522.3 and make it effective in Tulare County. That section of the Government Code allows for increased authority on the part of the Retirement Board over two key positions, one of which exists currently in the Retirement Office, one that could exist in the future, and those are the Assistant Retirement Administrator position and perhaps at some future date, a Chief Investment Officer position. This is deemed necessary on the part of the Retirement Board because of the role that these positions play in helping to implement investment-related policies and asset allocation models on the part of the Retirement Board. The board wants to make sure that it has staff that is carrying out the policies and directions of the Board of Retirement. So that is the request in a nutshell, Mr. Carter.
Supervisor Vanderpool?
Just a quick question, Dave, just for the education of my colleagues as well. The Chief Investment Officer, I was asked a question about it. This would not replace our consultant that is giving financial guidance to Sarah in our investment decisions, our professional investment consultant.
That is correct, although the Chief Investment Officer could lighten the load that's currently placed on a consultant by taking over some of the responsibilities that we essentially farm out to the consulting firm.
So with that comment, would you see the consultant's fees going down potentially, which is a cost to the plan? As you say, we could be lightening the load.
Honest response here is I never see consulting fees going down.
That's exactly what I'm trying to get out there, Dave.
But I think we would be able to present a very good argument for perhaps a reduction, or at the very least a remaining at a status quo on fee levels. Because honestly, a Chief Investment Officer position is not one that the board is even given serious consideration to currently. The discussion comes up at various times. If the plan reaches a certain milestone of total assets of the plan, maybe $2 billion, we would consider it at that time, but we're still a ways off from that point. So we're looking out into the future as to what that might be.
1937 Act counties that have chief investment officers? Are you aware?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Are you aware of any 1937 Act
Oh,
counties?
a number
that
of them,
have
yes,
chiefs?
especially the larger ones all do, and even some that are not so large. San Joaquin County, for example, has a chief investment officer and has for quite some time, perhaps even when they were the size that we are now. So it is not uncommon, but more uncommon for smaller plants such as ourselves.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Members of the public? Entertain a motion.
I would move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Vanderpool, second by Supervisor Valero. Cast your votes. Motions are unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I could just indulge the board for just one last moment, and
Absolutely.
that is to notify you all. I think some of you are aware that my final day with the county is this Friday. And I would just like to publicly thank the Board of Supervisors, the County Administrative Office, and the Office of County Counsel for all the support and encouragement that you have all provided to me many, many times over the last 21 years that I've been an employee of Tulare County. We have a strong retirement plan, and in large part it's due to the cooperative relationship that the Board of Supervisors has with the Board of Retirement. And so, again, thank you all for that. I hope that you will be able to continue to work with the Retirement Board going forward, and wish you all the greatest of success. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Chair, just one comment. And I've made this comment before in the Retirement Board forum, but I think it should be made here as well. Thank you for acknowledging the relationship that exists between the Retirement Board and the plan sponsor. Back in 2009, 2010, when the great financial recession was hitting us, we did make some changes to the smoothing rate to reduce the impact on the plan sponsor. And you talk about the health of Tessera's plan. Well, Tessera's plan is only as healthy as the plan sponsor that's supporting it and behind it. And so in large part due to your leadership and what you've been able to accomplish in your time here, Dave, we really do appreciate that strong Tessera and strong plan that we have, backed by a very strong plan sponsor, of course. But Tessera is very much in the position it's in because of your leadership and the responsibility you've exercised as the plan administrator. So I know you came to us from Orange County, but you're not even headed back to Orange County in your retirement, but kind of a little bit closer temperature to what Orange County has in San Luis Obispo County. But all the best to you in your retirement, and enjoy your final few days. Thanks, Dave.
Right, we will move on to item 34. Let's receive a presentation from the Resource Management Agency and accept the Rocky Hill Bicycle Pedestrian Path Feasibility Study prepared by Four Creeks, Inc. Mr. Washam.
Good morning. The presentation really isn't from RMA. We're just the vessel for this presentation. The consultant for Four Creeks is doing a presentation. This is a TCAG feasibility study that TCAG hired Four Creeks to do this public outreach and design a couple different alternatives. And so really, I'm just handing it off to Richard Walker from Four Creeks.
Good morning, board members. My name is Richard Walker, and I'm a senior planner with Four Creeks in Visalia. I had the great opportunity to complete the Rocky Hill Drive Bicycle and Pedestrian Path Feasibility Study with the assistance of the project team. Includes County Board of Supervisors, TCAG staff whom are in attendance today, as well as several key Tulare County RMA staff who are in attendance today. Feasibility study sections that we will discuss today will focus on project location, existing conditions, community outreach, design alternatives, evaluation and determination, and ultimately cost implications. Study area encompasses a 3.35-mile segment of Rocky Hill Drive from Road 204 Spruce Road to the west to Yokel Drive to the east. The study area is located in the midwestern portion of the county, approximately 1/2 mile east of the city of Exeter. There are a total of 16 property owners and approximately 29 access easements that abut the study area. The study area, particularly on the eastern edge between Yokel Drive and Yokel Creek, is constrained with significant environmental resources, including the brief lists provided in the legend below the constraints map, including federally threatened and federally endangered. The locations and extent of the significant environmental resources are based on reconnaissance level surveys. However, focus surveys are anticipated for the final project designs and environmental compliance document. The proposed designs for the feasibility study avoided the significant environmental resources to the greatest extent possible. Extensive public outreach efforts were completed to solicit the public's input regarding the best use and improvements for the study area. The outreach included 4 public meetings, a public survey questionnaire, and a tribal consultation meeting. The statistical results of the public outreach efforts include children being present 72% of the time when using Rocky Hill Drive. 50% of the users use Rocky Hill Drive both during the week and on the weekends. 81% of the users use Rocky Hill Drive for recreation and exercise. Over 70% of the users want Rocky Hill Drive to remain a 2-lane roadway. And 100% of the users would like to see off-site parking and accessibility to the site via that off-site parking. Now, as far as the 2 design alternatives that were analyzed pursuant to Caltrans design standards and county development standards where applicable, design option number 1, this design option actually is showing an alignment which begins along the northern right-of-way of Rocky Hill Drive all the way to the peak of Rocky Hill, then traverses over to the southern edge of the right-of-way through the remainder to Spruce Road. Now, the reason why this design alternative was selected is alternative 1 was the least impactful and most cost-effective, and by switching the alignment at the peak of Rocky Hill Drive, there were significant avoidance with respect to environmental resources and a reduction in right-of-way acquisition as well as excavation and grading. Now, this design includes a Class 3 shared bicycle vehicle roadway to be used by advanced cyclists and a separated Class 1 bike trail to be used by pedestrians and beginner cyclists. And this design is preferred by 100% of the cyclists and a majority of the public who provided their input. Now, alternative number 2 follows the Rocky Hill Drive right-of-way along the southern edge for the entire 3.35 mile stretch. It is a more elaborate design alternative in that it includes a one-way Class 2 bike lane in either direction, once again for the advanced cyclists, as well as a separated Class 1 bike trail to be used by pedestrians and beginner cyclists. 100% of the cyclists disapprove of the proposed Class 2 bike lanes for safety reasons. So in conclusion, it's fairly unanimous that the preferred alternative is design option 1. There may be some discussion amongst board members, TCAG staff, RMA staff with respect to the appropriate alignment. However, it is also the most cost-effective, approximately a 10% difference, but by far the preferred alternative for the project when in fact it does become a project. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Good. I just want to, for the two new board members and members of the public, this was something that I initiated at the request of some constituents that the board approved and moved forward with getting a feasibility study, and ultimately TCAG is the primary. But there have been there's a fatality on Rocky Hill, and so really it's a safety issue as far as currently pedestrians. What wasn't stated is that pedestrians utilize Rocky Hill on a regular basis for recreation, exercise. It was somewhat in there walking in the middle of the street. It's not a very busy street, but as far as vehicle traffic, but there's quite a bit of cyclists, and so that's really been the issue. It hasn't been cyclists to vehicles. It's been more cyclists versus pedestrians that are the issue. Pedestrians don't always understand or implement the proper ways to utilize the public right-of-way. And so I think that this is really this is just the first initial step to see what options are to whether or not there's any improvements that are available for us to do. Obviously, I think there's still many other hurdles that would have to be met, including dollars for that. So, and I think as was breezed over, but there was a cost evaluation, and I think those are some general numbers, but they're, it's not necessarily a cheap project.
Yeah, if I may, Four Creeks has revised those tables somewhat, so this is an update on the fees.
Very good.
For the proposed cost. Anyway, for today, I know that there may be someone in the audience that wants to speak, so public may have comments. This is really informational item only, brought to your board just for accepting the feasibility study and to understand that it was completed. And as the chairman has said, this will be something for future consideration.
Well, yeah, it is an action item to accept the report, but it's not, accepting the report does not mean we're moving forward with the project. So with that, is there any questions from the board? Comments from the board? I'll open it up to the public. Any member of the public wishing to speak regarding this feasibility study, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Both microphones are on.
So I'm Linda Gill, and I am a property owner along this proposed bike path. And I'm the only one here today, as we did not know this meeting. This was coming before the board today. I was notified yesterday, but no one else was able to come. Some things we would like you to take into consideration, I'm the only one here today, of course, as you're moving forward on this or looking at this proposed pathway. Land will be needed to be taken from the landowners in this. We would really appreciate when you move forward on this that you do try to take the least amount of land possible. It's very nice to have lovely wide pathways, seating areas, restrooms. Those are great, but it also impacts the landowner a great deal. One of the proposals in option 2, and I did speak to Four Creeks about this previously, was the fact there would be a lookout. And that also sounds very nice until the sun goes down. And there are people up there with guns and knives. There have been robberies. There's been shootings up there. And You know, benches are wonderful during the daytime, but at night, what a great place to collect for the people that don't have good intention. So it creates a real safety issue up there. In the budget, I feel that there needs to be a great consideration on the cost of fencing. With this pathway, I'm sure you would agree, there will be increased use on this. And as it is now, the pedestrians are in there. They use some of the private land as public land. They cut fences. They hike the hills. They cause real safety issues. Our insurance is quite interesting because of it. The one thing that you can do if you put this pathway in, make sure the budget includes some substantial fencing along the grove and the ranch land. As I was looking through the booklet, did you receive the same booklet? Okay. So I was looking through the booklet. I see some very pretty fencing from dividing the road from the walkers, but there's going to need to be some type of cyclone fencing, something to keep the increased number of people off the private property. Just a couple things in here I noticed. I'm sorry I'm not more prepared what's going to happen, but as I was looking at this, there was also one other thing that was admitted on page 21. They said there were no homes on only on one side of the road. I have to object. I live up there. And so the fact the study needs to include everyone in that, I believe. Yes, there are homes on the north side, but if you've ever driven over Rocky Hill recently, there are also buildings on the south side, a home on the south side. It mentioned on page 59 there'll be extensive excavation. That is going to impact all the landowners. The pathway won't just magically appear. There will be equipment up there. There are cattle on this property, and that they'll have to take some expense in safety measures, that we do not have cattle out on the road and that people are not injured by those. And the parking areas, as I mentioned, those will be a real issue because the more people, the more parking. Have enough parking for the people that are now up there. Wait and see what happens once the pathway comes along. So that will be more land that will be taken. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make a few comments in related to that. I think we're here today because of the fact that this is the county doesn't necessarily advertise Rocky Hill as a recreation or exercise place. I think this has just naturally occurred as a wonderful scenic road, and so trying to mitigate for the negative impacts that individuals are already utilizing are part of that. But I appreciate all the comments because I think now is the appropriate time to make those comments because it's the early phase if anything happens, and so all of those should be taken into consideration. I know Ted and Stephen are in the back and are working towards this same feasibility study coming towards TCAG, and so I just ask that staff make sure that Ms. Gill's on all the appropriate notifications so that before it comes to TCAG that she gets advance notice, as well as the other property owners as well on the corridor before it comes before that. Any other comments?
And I'll just echo those comments. I think that it's great that Ms. Gill came and spoke now because before a project actually becomes a project and starts moving forward, if landowner concerns are brought to the attention of the project engineers and the agencies that are implementing the project, there can be adjustments made and accommodations made. So I know that this isn't something where we want to go into it, and I know TCAG does full class or first class work and doesn't want anything that either landowners or the public are not going to be happy with. So
I just say that based on our actions from earlier this morning, I think we demonstrated that we don't take eminent domain proceedings lightly, and so we want to make sure that that's one of our least viable options. So to your point, as far as taking private ownership. I think the least amount is the preference in all circumstances.
Actually, when looking at this a few days ago, and again, I'm not a cyclist, but for me, in terms of looking at both options, personally, I would have thought that the community would have gone with option 2, just because, again, for me, I thought safety because you have your own bike lane, and then aesthetically pleasing due to just the way it's presented here. But it's interesting to then receive the feedback from the community and that comment that was made about option 1 being the most favorable. So thank you for kind of enlightening me in that area as well.
Other comments from the board, questions, or members of the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept or deny.
Move to accept.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Shucklian, second by Supervisor Valero. Please cast your votes. And the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to our last untimed item, item 35, a request from the Board of Supervisors staff to receive input and provide direction regarding the 2019 Tulare County State Legislative Platform and 2019 Tulare County Federal Legislative.
Good morning. Good morning, Board, Council, CAO, and Chief Clerk Julieta Martinez, Chief of Staff with the County Board of Supervisors, and with me today is Denise England, Water Resource Program Director. On February 26th, your board held a study session as part of your regularly scheduled board meeting where we reviewed drafts of both the state and federal legislative platforms, and that was really staff's opportunity to receive thoughts and direction from the board as far as what we'd like to see included in this document for the 2019 year. In front of you and included in the agenda packet were revisions made, redlined after that study session. So a lot of the items that are outlined in both the state and federal platform were additions made resulting from comments of that study session. One quick highlight, if you will please turn to your state legislative platform. One of the additions was that of higher education. They were sentiments given to staff by Supervisor Crocker, echoed by Supervisor Amy Shucklian. To please note one correction in the first paragraph, second sentence, where it says the four classroom building at the College of the Sequoias offers non-credit professional development courses. We will add and expanding higher degree programs. So just to note that change. And just in continuing to review this document, other additions and changes were made under the water supply, surface water storage, where we did add support for new water bonds in general that include funding for temperance flat, mitigation of subsidence, water quality improvement, and implementation of SIGMA, trying to include as many catch-all items as we can because we never know what's going to come before us. Some corrections to PILT, and again, some additions of language regarding immigration that we tried to put in there at the request of Supervisor Townsend, and some solid waste items. So with that, I will turn back to you as far as the state legislative platform draft to see if you have any additional comments or changes or language changes that you wanted. I will make one comment that we did look into adding some language regarding to criminal justice or juvenile justice. It is staff's recommendation at this point to hold off because in speaking with our state lobbyists, there really isn't a lot of positive things out there for us to support right now, and there's not concrete language we're getting from anyone right now that we can add in here. I think a lot of the things that are coming down the pipeline are going to require us to really be opposed to different subject matters. So I would suggest that we hold off before we include that in there until we get more concrete language, and then we can always come back and amend a section of the platform to include that. So with that, if you have any comments as far as the state legislative platform.
I appreciate the updates to the part regarding Fresno State's campus here. Actions that were made. Any other questions, comments from the board?
I would just like to say I was the one that did bring up the juvenile justice and the criminal justice reform. But given your comments now, I am willing to move forward and look at that at another time. Thank you.
So with that, if no comments on the state, I will also just like to briefly highlight the federal platform. And just note that there wasn't major changes. Some additions to forest management, secure rural schools, because NACO did have some language out there in a bill, so we added the support for creation of a type of endowment fund to provide stable and reliable funding for county services. Again, trying to create general language that allows us to really support different bills that might be placed out there by our delegates. Some minor updates to subsidence in the Frank Kern Canal, and again, at the request of a supervisor, language added concerning trade. So with that, if you have any suggestions or changes to the federal platform.
Any members of the public wishing to speak on either the state or federal platform?
And before we finish today, we do have a future advocacy trip scheduled for state advocacy, April 23rd. And every year I come back to the board and ask that you please just highlight your priority issues that you want to focus those meetings on. So you can either rank them or at least maybe give me 3 or 4 topics that you really just want those meetings to be based on. Of course, the entire document is our guideline for the year, but just it guides staff and our lobbyists to get those meetings scheduled for you. Our federal trip has not been decided yet. We are still working on those dates and working with our federal lobbyists. So when we come back to that, we can the topics then, or we can go ahead and discuss those as well. But staff is asking that the board please provide some priority issues.
And do we have to provide that today, or?
If you have any in mind, you can. If you think of something later, that's also an option.
I would just say that I don't think we can create really an exclusive list today of priority issues. It's amazing that in a very short period of time, the state can provide legislation that can dictate the priorities that this board has very quickly and can change, what we thought was our foundational principles of priority. But so we have to have some flexibility, and I think that we have to evaluate. I think any of these issues could be of top priority. But it's amazing in the conversations that we do have, we are able to touch on so many of these different issues. So I'll just put it out there. If your issue isn't in a top 3, it doesn't mean it's not able to be addressed.
Well, and I think it might depend on who we're meeting with.
Exactly.
And, if there's specific members of the administration, if it's a secretary, we don't want to talk about things that's not within their purview. Depending on the legislative member, they all have different issues that are more relevant to them. Any other questions, comments? If not, we can.
Or I would say if anybody else doesn't want to highlight those, I'll give you 3 or 4.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I think we all probably will have some highlights, just whether or not we have them today, and I think we can relay that to staff, and then staff can help focus and maybe get a little bit more information on each of those, so that when we do have the advocacy trip, we've got speaking roles, and so that we're not, everyone's kind of has a spot. And
I think it depends on who we're able to meet with and what they can do regarding that particular stance.
But part of it will be, part of it depends on what our priorities will be, will also determine who we meet with. So it's kind of hand in hand as well. So we don't want to wait to the exact last point.
So I have a quick question, and just me being fairly new to this board, is there a reason why we do kind of the state and the federal priorities prior to kind of the state bringing on the bills and what they're going to work on for the year, and potentially, again, not that we're beholden to the state per se, but what would it look like if we kind of held off on it and we're able to kind of structure our priorities based on some of the things that are out there? This is just a suggestion. It's not something but to think about. But again, I don't know in terms of the timing and how we create our priorities, and then based on that, looking at kind of bills and the support from the state. So what would it look like if we kind of held off a little bit, and then being able to see the landscape of what's coming from the state, and then we're really working on our priorities that way. But again, this is just a comment and something that I was thinking about as we were doing this.
Well, I think it's important that the platform is generally more broad as far as what it covers. So it's covering ideas and not necessarily specific language. There are a few exceptions to that when we know for sure that there's specific language or bills that we want. And this is a guiding document for our lobbyists in both Washington, D.C. and Sacramento, as well as staff, to figure out where they know as legislation changes, because as Supervisor Vanderpool said, today we might have a list of bills that are already in print, but we also know that there's a gut and amend process. Yeah. There's the budget cycle that can change the information, so we can take a position on SB 1000 or whatever the bill number is, but if that changes, this kind of guides the document, so the lobbyist can say, well, today we do support this, but if it changes, then it's like, okay, we don't support this based on the policy guidance that we've given. Agreed. Outside of that, I think it's important to note we do take individual stances on specific pieces of legislation that's as a letter, as a board, as a whole. We've already done that on a couple of pieces of legislation, I think, this year. And so that's something that we continue as we know, and we're refined, and something that we want to take positions on. We have that flexibility to do that now. But I think that's generally the gist is it gives some flexibility for our lobbyists and staff to know the direction that we want, but knowing that we can make it more specific as we have more information.
Yeah, duly noted.
And I would add, it's an iterative process, as this is something we do year to year. So we start with this document next year, and based on this legislative session, we can edit to sort of gear the board's priorities. But also from a timing perspective for staff, if we get a request to send a letter of support and it fits within your platform, we're able to do that from the full board and have the chairman sign on behalf of the full board, or have each of you sign if we have enough time. But as we get into late summer, as bills start to go to committee, we don't always have enough time to bring something specific to your board for approval to oppose or support. But this document, we're able to do those things, and the Tulare County's voice is able to be heard.
Yep, duly noted.
Just one more comment to add. Several counties have their guidelines in the form of a state and federal platform. Everybody has a different style. Some of them are a couple, 30, 40, 50 pages, very, very broad general language. This has been kind of the working document that has worked for us. But like I stated earlier, there's no reason why we couldn't come back and say a month or two. There's just so many things that the state has thrown out at us that why we couldn't amend. It's meant to be a working document that fits our needs and our vision. And so if that vision is changing, we can certainly change the document to fit our new outlook. So we can always revisit this during the year. Just because we have one formal presentation at the beginning of the year doesn't mean we can't come back and look at it. So if an individual supervisor ever has a question going forward, staff can certainly look into that and make those necessary changes should the entire board agree on them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, this is an action item to approve the amendments to the platform.
I make a motion to approve the amendments to the platform.
Second.
I have a motion by Supervisor Valero and a second by Supervisor Shucklian. Please cast your votes. And the votes are unanimous. Thank you. County Council, we have any need for a closed session?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do. Items A, B, and D are off calendar as not needed. Item F is pulled. Item C was heard earlier, and there is no report out. Items E and G through M will be heard in closed session, and I do not expect any announcements out.
Is there any public comment or any items on closed session? Seeing none, we'll adjourn to closed session.